So is your Jeep ready for that sound system that you've been after, but you're just not sure how to do it? Maybe you think it's a little bit too big of a project for you to take on. Stick around. We're going to show you how easy of a job this is to install into your JK. Hey everybody, Mike here with Trail 7. Today we have the long-awaited amplifier install into the Jeep JK. This bundle is applicable for the 07 to 18s. Today we're going to show you how to install this into a 15 to 18 model JK. Like I said, this applies for the 07 to 18, but today we're going to do the 15 to 18. So if you have an 07 to 14, you may see some differences in your dash and some trim panels, etc. But fundamentally, the bundle is the same. Everything will install the same way. I'm going to walk you through a couple of things that we do for you. I'm going to demonstrate how to connect the wiring to the amplifier. We're going to install the amplifier, test it. I'm going to show you the full rundown from beginning to end of how to install the amplifier into your JK. Now, our JK audio system bundles are applicable for factory amplified systems or non-factory amplified systems. If you don't know whether your Jeep is factory amplified, take a look at our page and we have some pictures of what to look for. In a nutshell, if your Jeep is factory amplified, in the back of the Jeep, you're going to have a speaker grill, either in the floorboard, depending on the year, of a subwoofer, or on the side, right side of the cargo area, you'll see a subwoofer there. The Infinity systems from 07 to 14 will have a side enclosure subwoofer. The 15 to 18 Alpine systems will have a center grill in the center of the cargo area. Either way, if you have that subwoofer grill in your cargo area, then you do have the amplified system. That matters for when you choose the options of which bundle to pick for your JK, whether you're going to choose factory amplified or non-factory amplified because of the wiring harness that we send you. And I'll show you each wiring harness. We're going to demonstrate the factory amplified version into this Jeep here. I'm also going to demonstrate if it was non-factory amplified of how that wiring is going to look and how that's going to connect in the Jeep as well. Just so you know that our bundles only come set up for an aftermarket radio. So if you have a factory radio in your JK, our bundles aren't going to be set up for that. You can purchase a pack module, CH21, and you can connect that, but that's not how we're going to set this up, and our bundles are going to be set up for an aftermarket radio, which is going to connect from the amplifier via RCAs to the aftermarket radio. We're going to demonstrate all of that. Now let me run through a couple of the parts and pieces that come with our full system bundles. Just a reminder, everything from Trail 7 is plug and play. We connectorize all of the connections that are needed, all of the adapters that are needed, so everything will come with whatever type of connection is needed in order to attach it to the amplifier, to the Jeep, etc. So starting what we have here on the table, the RCAs, of course, the power wire is going to be prepped with the ferrule leads required, the grounding is going to be prepped with the ferrules and the connections required. The fuse block we have here are the different types of amp harnesses. The amp harness that we're going to use today for the actual installation is Trail 7's plug and play factory amplifier bypass. So if your Jeep has the factory amplifier, this is going to connect to where the factory amplifier is located. We're going to show all this to you. This is going to connect to the amplifier. And this is going to bypass the factory amplifier, but still utilize the Jeep's factory speaker wires. So you don't need to run new speaker wires from the amp to the speakers. This harness is going to do all that for you. We have two other options here with amp harnesses, depending on if you purchase a bundle and you have your own aftermarket radio. If so, the wire that comes to you is going to be prepared with the ferrules to connect to the amplifier. And it's also going to come with these connectors on here that you're going to have to attach to your radio. Since, of course, we don't have your radio, you're going to simply pull the back of your radio, attach this to your speaker wires matching color to color, and this connector is going to connect right in, and that's what's going to attach to the factory speaker wires from the amplifier. I'll do a little bit of a demonstration in the Jeep when we get there as well. Now, if you purchase a radio from Trail 7 simultaneously, we'll prepare the radio and the amplifier harness to sync up together. With that, you would receive this harness here, which I'm going to demonstrate this harness, how to install it into the Jeep when we get there as well, because we have an aftermarket radio in the Jeep. This is going to connect to the amplifier, and these two Molex connectors are going to connect to the back of the aftermarket radio onto existing clips that are back there. You're going to disconnect the clips, attach this, and again, I'm going to show you how to do all that as well. So that covers most of the parts and pieces that come with the bundle. We'll walk through anything else that's additional while we're doing the install. Just to let you know that this demonstration will cover how to install the amplifier into the Jeep. We have plenty of other speaker install videos that we'll put the links down in the description. We have plenty of other aftermarket radio installation videos that we'll put also down into the description. This bundle applies for a 5-channel amplifier, and it's to any one of the 5-channel amplifier bundles that we sell. Even 4 channels, there's hooking up an additional mono amp to that 4-channel, but today we're going to cover the 5-channel. Regardless if you're installing an Audison, an audio control, a JBL, a Hertz, a Kicker, an Alpine, a Sony, etc., any one of our bundles, this installation demonstration is going to apply. So take a look at what we have here. We have the Kicker amplifier. We have this already mounted onto an amp bracket. This amp bracket will be available in the bundles. It's not going to apply to all of them because this amp bracket's only going to fit into a 4-door. This amp bracket does not fit into a 2-door JK, unfortunately, which is okay. There are plenty of other methods to installing the amplifier to resting it there, or you can simply just attach double-sided Velcro sticky tape to the bottom of the amp, set that underneath the seat, and that's just going to stick onto the carpet, and that's going to prevent it from sliding around. It's not going to go anywhere. So today we're going to mount it to this bracket here. This bracket, it's a universal bracket. This bracket is not meant for one particular amplifier. It's a Stinger bracket. It is maybe meant for some of their Stinger amplifiers, some maybe an audio control amplifier. The Kicker amplifier doesn't line up completely with the holes in here, so you may have to drill some holes. You may just find a hole that lines up to the edge, like on here, where this just lines up to the edge, and we just put a piece of we just put a zip tie around it. So if you don't want to drill, just find a hole that matches up with the edge, just strap a piece of zip tie to it, and you're good to go. You could even just take a piece of that Velcro and attach it to the bottom of the amplifier onto the amp bracket. Either way, the amp bracket's universal. It's not specifically meant for one of the amplifiers, so you're going to have to modify that little bit for it to fit. So in addition to this, here's a handful of some very basic tools that we use. We'll put a list of all of the tools required right here for you. Now that we have that covered, I'm going to demonstrate how to attach the amp harness to the amplifier, how to attach the power wire to the amplifier, the ground wire to the amplifier, the RCAs to the amplifier, and the subwoofer wire to the amplifier. We're going to attach all of that here at the bench, and then we're going to bring this over and we're going to install it into the JK. So let's get started with our amp bypass harness first. All right, now we're going to go ahead and land the ground, power, remote wire, and the speaker wires to this side of the amplifier. Again, your amplifier may have a different configuration of where all of this is located, so just accommodate based on what amplifier you receive. So starting at the ground, all of our kits will come with the ground wires pre-terminated with the ferrule connector. This is just going to attach into the ground port. Next one in the middle is the remote wire. This is the wire that's going to attach from the amplifier, the remote wire port, to the remote wire port on the back of your aftermarket radio. On your aftermarket radio, it may be listed as remote wire, amp in, amp turn on. There's several different tags that those wires are listed as. So just know remote wire, that is your amp on wire that's going to trigger the amp to turn on when your radio turns on. Let's go ahead and connect that. This is located in the amp harness. This is the blue wire with the ferrule on it as well. Now let's go ahead and connect the power, the 12 volt, that's your power wire. Don't necessarily pay attention to the company markings on the wires here or the color. Depending on what amp kit you receive, you may have a different gauge wire. It may be a black power wire, maybe a blue power wire, maybe a yellow power wire. Just know that power wire is power wire, and this is where it's connecting into. Same with the ground wire. This, for the majority of the time, should be a black wire. However, don't pay attention to the markings of it. Your markings may be different depending on the gauge, etc. Now let's go ahead and land the speaker wires. As I said, this is the Kicker amp. This is where the speaker wires are located here. Some Alpine amplifiers have these plugs that you have to land the speaker wire ferrules onto the plugs and then connect the plug into the amplifier. This one here has this whole bridge clip already attached into it, so we're just going to land them onto here. So we will have a picture showing how to land the wires, what colors land where. So in the speaker wire world and auto world, your left front is white, your right front is gray, your left rear is green, and your right rear is purple. So following that pattern, white, gray, green, purple, we're going to land the wires on the amp harness to match, and we're just going to follow positive and negative. The negative is the wire that has the black stripe on it. So starting on the bottom, so it's easier, with the green over on this side over here. So it's marked on here left. And on the side over here, it's marked amp 1 and amp 2. So amp 1 is going to be your front speakers. Amp 2 is going to be your rear speakers. Most amplifiers will have some sort of designation that says amp 1 or amp 2. All right, so starting with amp 2, which is our rears, we're going to start with the left. We're going to go green. So we're going to get the green positive. So you've got both of these wires. They both are going to come pre-terminated with the ferrules from us. The solid green wire is your positive. The green wire with the black stripe, that is your negative. Same applies for the rest of the colors. White solid is positive. White with the black stripe is negative, and so forth. So starting with our green positive. Moving to our green negative. Moving to the next one, which is purple. It's going to be purple positive. So look for the purple solid, which is this guy here. And then purple black stripe, which is negative, rear right. So there you have the rears connected, left rear, right rear, positive, negative, positive, negative. Now we're going to move the front section, which is the front speakers. Left is your dash as well as your knee, and then the right is your dash as well as your knee on the right side. So starting the left, let's go with the white. So your white solid is your positive. Your white with the black stripe, that's your negative. And the last right side of the front Jeep is gray. So gray solid is your positive. Gray striped is your negative. Now that connects the 4 channels of the 5-channel amp. Channel 1 is going to be your dash and your knee. Channel 2 is other dash and knee. Channel 3 is your left rear, 2 speakers in the rear. And your channel 4 is your right side, 2 speakers in the right. This leaves these 2 ports here. This is for your subwoofer. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to attach the subwoofer ferrules to these here as well. Top is your positive, bottom is your negative. Using the provided subwire, do the bottom first, it's easier. Your negative. And this is your positive. Again, so this is a 5-channel amp, 4 channels of speaker, 1 channel of your subwoofer. If you had a 4-channel amp, everything would apply the same. You just wouldn't have your subwoofer to attach. Your subwoofer would attach to your mono amplifier. So this side is connected. Let's flip this amp bracket around and I'll connect the RCAs and show you how that's done. So now we have the RCAs to connect. Again, this amplifier has the RCAs on the opposite side of the speaker and the ground. The amplifier that you choose may have a different configuration, location. Fundamentally, the installation and landing is going to be the same. We like these nice thin RCAs. These are directional, so they do need to be installed a certain direction from the amplifier to the head unit. These will come with a tag on here, and this tag on here says connect to source. This is implying the radio. So this is going to be the radio side. So we're going to grab the opposite end of that. These RCAs have this little identifier here. S is for the sub. So these are the sub RCAs. F is for the front, and R is for the rear. So let's go ahead and connect our front. Remember, amp 1 is your front, amp 2 is your rear, and sub is your sub, of course. So let's go to amp 1, which is going to be your front. And just grab a color. You'll see this is red, and this is black. RCAs that you have, that you're using, may have different colors. Just as long as you're matching the same color on this side to the head unit, then you'll be fine. So So we're going to use red for our right. So amp 1, let's go red to right. Amp 1, let's go black to white. Amp 2, we're going to grab the rear, same color pattern, red to red, black to white. And then for our sub, we're going to grab the RCA that has the S on it. And this is red to red and black to white. We have a bunch of adjustments here and settings. We'll get into that later once we do the install. And we also have some pictures that we'll put in our install guide that'll help you to dial in the amplifier. The amplifier is not going to come from us pre-set up. We're not going to adjust the amplifier. So you're going to do this on your side once you have it installed. And again, we have plenty of guides and help to assist with that. So now this full kit is ready to go. This is full ready to install. We're going to take this just as is, and we're going to bring this over to the Jeep, and we're going to install it. But first, we need to go ahead and prepare the Jeep for the installation. All right, so the first part of this is the dash disassembly. We want to remove the dash so we can take the aftermarket radio out. Remember, this amplifier bundle is only going to apply to connect to an aftermarket radio, so we're going to need to grab the RCAs that are back of the radio. So this top dash piece comes out in case you haven't taken out your radio before. Top dash piece comes out. There are 4 bolts behind this screen here, and this screen comes out. And also, since we're going to route wiring from underneath the seat here through this transmission tunnel area up through the footwell area, it's going to come up to the glove box. I'm going to go ahead and remove the glove box as well so we have that area exposed. So let's go start with that. Goes out. Take the glove box out, you just squeeze both sides. Now we're going to go ahead and take the dash out to get the radio out. There's one bolt right on top here. That's a 7mm. All of these are 7mm. So we're going to remove that 7mm up on top. So with the bolt up here, it's a 7mm. As I said before, we have plenty of aftermarket radio installation videos. So if you want to see a very detailed disassembly of the dash and installation of an aftermarket radio, disassembly to remove the factory radio, etc., we'll drop some links down in the description so you can watch those videos. So here we're just going to cruise through taking this dash apart. So 7mm bolt up on top here. This window control switch panel, this comes out, and behind there is another bolt to get the dash out. So let's go ahead and take this off with a panel removal tool. There's a little plug back behind here. You have to reach in, hit the plug to get this out. And then there is one bolt that's down inside here. Again, there's a very detailed video that it's going to show all of the dash assembly that's specific for the aftermarket radio installation. There's the little screw that's inside there. So there are 2 screws on each side of the steering wheel column. You have to pull this plate down, or pull this trim piece down first. Just reach in, pull it down. And there's 2 screws, one right here, and one on the same exact side and other side of the steering wheel. Now, like I said, on the exact other side of the steering wheel, same screw to remove there. Now we're going to take this last screw out the other side of the steering wheel column. So now all 4 screws are out of the dash. We can just go ahead and lift this dash piece out, just like this. And we can move this out of the way. So now we have these 4 screws, these 4 bolts surrounding the radio. We're going to pull those out. Now we can just go ahead and remove our radio. So now this is just to expose the RCAs on the back. This is a JVC radio. The RCAs are built into the back of the radio. Your aftermarket radio may have a harness with the RCAs exposed. Either way, our point is just to be able to get to the RCAs. So we can leave this here and we can connect all of our RCA cables once we run them. All right, so we have the dash out. disassembled, ready for that. We're going to go ahead and remove the driver's seat. Obviously, the passenger seat has been removed. It's not necessary. We just removed it for everything that we have going on here in the studio to help better visualize some things that we have coming up once we install the amplifier. So not necessary to remove this seat, but hey, since it's out, I'm going to go ahead and use this space to do what I need to do with the seat. So we're going to remove the seat. There are 2 bolts in the back, there are 2 bolts in the front, and there's a clip underneath the underside of it. So I've pushed the seat all the way forward to access the 2 rear bolts, which we'll do first, and then slide it back, undo the clip, unbolt the 2 front bolts, and then pull the seat out. So let's hit these 2 rear bolts now. So to get these 2 bolts off, we need an 18mm socket. And I will say that this Jeep needs an 18mm. We have seen in the past that other Jeeps may have different size bolts here. So before you get into this, just make sure that yours is the 18mm and make sure you don't need something different. So this Jeep here, this is a 2017. That doesn't mean that your 2017 is going to have the same exact bolts. Just from what we've seen over the years, we've seen different variation of bolts placed from what we've seen in the videos. In addition to the 2 front bolts and the power clip underneath there is this side bolt that needs to come out. This is what holds the seatbelt harness in. So this does need to come out in order to get the seat out. You could probably just remove the 2 front bolts and tilt the seat backwards and not remove it. But for ease of what we have going on here, we're going to remove the seat completely. So we're going to remove the seatbelt clip here. This is a T40 Torx bit. Now that the seatbelt has been removed, disconnected, right below that is this wire harness that also needs to be removed. Your Jeep may not have this. I believe this is for the heated seats. So if your Jeep doesn't have heated seats, you may not have this connector here. So since it's easily accessible right here, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this connector. So you're going to push in this little spot right here and then pull the bottom out and pull right out. Now I'm going to go ahead and slide the seat back so I can reach the 2 front bolts. All right, now that the seat is out and the area is prepared for the amp bracket, since we prepped everything on the table already, everything is already connected, we can just go ahead and take that full kit, that full bundle, and bring that right over and set that down to place, and we'll start routing our wires and terminating everything. So here's the full bracket. All right, now that this is in place, you'll see the rear bolts line up, and this is where the amp bracket's going to mount using the factory seat bolts. Up front, there's a bolt in the front here. Underneath this part is a bolt that's holding the carpet down to 10mm. You'll take that bolt out, and you'll hold that through the hole here, and that's going to hold the front of the amp bracket down. So this will hold the front down, this will hold the rear down. Don't mount it yet. We're going to probably move this thing and slide this thing all over the place, because as we're routing wires and as we get to the end of the wire management, we're probably going to lift this up and tuck some wires underneath the carpeting. So just so you know that that's where it mounts. As far as the routing, we're going to route the RCAs through the transmission tunnel. We're also going to route a 9-wire amp harness. If you purchase the radio from us simultaneously and you have a non-factory amplified system, then you're going to get this 9-wire here. You're going to attach this the same way that we did on the table. The only difference is you're going to route this wire through the transmission tunnel just as we do with the RCAs, and then connect this to the back of the radio. I'll show you when we get there. For this install here, since this Jeep is factory amplified, we're going to use our amp bypass harness, which is already connected. This routing is going to go in front of the amplifier, underneath the bracket here, and along the trim up the side, and I'll connect that to the amp bypass location, and we'll demonstrate that in a minute as well. So for now, we're going to go ahead and land the ground wire. 10mm bolt right here, we're going to land the ground wire. We're going to go ahead and run the RCAs through the transmission tunnel and that other amp harness so I can show you how that's going to connect to the radio. And then we'll come back and we'll route the power, route the subwire, route the amp bypass harness, and continue on from there. Now we're going to route the RCAs through the transmission tunnel here. This is where your fish tape, wire stick, coat hanger, whatever you're going to use is going to come in handy. So make sure you get all 3 of the RCAs. All right, now we're going to use our fish stick here, stick this through the transmission tunnel to get the RCAs and the amp harness through. So there's an area in the back here. Just keep in mind, there's several different ways to get this done, right? You can route the RCAs up the side trim panel, up underneath the steering wheel column, and back to the radio. You can go along the side of the transmission tunnel here. It's a little difficult that way. It's a little tight that way. Or you can just go through it here. We're going to go through it here. So if you find the other ways are better for you, by all means, go for it. This is just the way that we're going to route it here. So going through the transmission tunnel here, go back on the back side. Again, we have the passenger seat out just because of being in the studio and trying to show as much as we can here. It may be easier to get this done with this passenger seat out. However, it's not necessarily necessary. So let's go. Push this back through here. It's on the back side. You'll find the tunnel where it goes through. Now, if the seat's in and you can just reach down and you can lift the panel up a little bit, you can feel where the wire comes through. So again, if you do have a non-factory amplified Jeep, you're going to have to route this 9-wire, this amp harness as well. So whether you have the radio that you purchased from us with these connectors, or if you have this harness because you purchased the radio outside, you didn't purchase from us, you had it prior to, you're going to route this harness or this harness through that same pathway, connected to the amplifier, the speaker wires, route that through, and then we're going to show you how to connect this to the aftermarket radio once we get up to that point. Now we're going to go ahead and route the RCAs up along the tunnel here and up behind the glove box. So it's put it behind the glove box first, and then we can manage the wiring afterwards. You're going to route the RCAs and wiring behind this black tube here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up all of your slack because you can manage all the slack behind this. Now we can go ahead and we can tuck the RCA underneath the tunnel here. Okay. Now we're going to route the RCAs. So you're just going to reach back behind here with the left hand, reach back. I can touch my fingers side to side, touch them, touch them. Just go ahead and push the RCAs through that little channel there and pull them through. If you don't want to pull too much through, you're going to manage all your slack behind here. Now you can go ahead and attach the RCAs to the head unit. So following the same pattern that you connected to the amplifier earlier, matching on this wire here, where it says RFS, R for rear, F for front, S for sub. Let's go ahead and grab our fronts, and you can match them to the RCAs on the back of your radio. Your radio may be different from this one. This is the JVC radio. So in this one here, this is the front in the middle here. The rear is up top, and this is the sub. So we're going to grab the front, which is the middle. We're going to go red to red and black to white, just how we did on the amplifier. R, the rear. the top here, these RCAs, it's identified as rear on the radio here. Red and white. And now the sub, same thing, red and white, red to red, white to black. All right, again, so since this Jeep is factory amplified, we're going to route the amp harness from the other direction. But since we're here, I wanted to show you connecting this harness here. So this is the harness that you're going to receive if you order the aftermarket radio from Trail 7 with the amplifier kit. This is, again, going to connect to the amplifier with your speaker wires. This end here, you're going to follow the RCA path. You're going to route it in the back. You're going to come out here. And what you're going to do is you're going to attach, we'll have these wires available for you, these clips available for you. They'll be exposed. And you're going to connect these male to the female Molex connectors. And you're going to match color of speaker wire to color of speaker wire. So matching the purple and the green with this connector here, which is purple and green. Don't pay attention to the color of the connector itself. Make sure that you match the color of the speaker wire. So that's going to connect into that. Same thing for this side. This is the gray and the white. Underneath this tape here, you'll see that it's gray and white. So that's going to tap into the factory speaker wire, so you don't need to run new speaker wire. You're just running this amp harness. In addition to that, now you're going to connect the remote wire. The harness provided by us is going to have this female pink bullet connector on there. It's going to be attached to this blue wire with a little white label, and it says amp turn on right here. This male bullet connector is going to attach into that. And there you go. Now this part's all done. You're ready to go ahead and put the radio back into its spot. But since we're going to attach the other harness, which is for the factory amp bypass, we're going to remove this. And I'm going to show you how to install the other one and route the other wire. For that, I'm going to move the other side because we're going to route the power wire and the amp bypass harness in the same path, because that's going to connect right around the same area, which is underneath the driver footwell. So leave this exposed. You can button this area up here and you can put the glove box back. Go ahead and zip tie this wire back behind there. Clean that up. Next, since we have the amp bypass, because we are in a factory amplified Jeep, we have to route and connect the factory amp bypass harness, our Trail 7 harness. We need to route the power through the little grommet, through the fire hole, into the engine, to the battery. Subwire is going to route to the back of the Jeep. In order to do so, we need to remove this trim panel. So you need to take this little button off here, take this button off here, pop this trim panel piece off, and then we can start routing or wiring. As you'll see here, I just went ahead and managed this. I just wrapped some tape around it, put a couple zip ties just to clean it up. These are the RCAs. This is the speaker wire that's wrapped in the snakeskin here. There's a sub wire. They're just wrapped together just to clean them up. Just go ahead and get these removed. Using a panel removal tool. I like these kind, that little fork kind, or these tabs. Your tabs may be different looking than these here, but you will have tabs here to remove. You can get this one off a door here also. There's one here in the door trim. Now that the tabs are out, you can go ahead and pull the trim piece out. And that just pushes out. And here's our channel for our power wire and for the amp bypass harness, which is what we're going to do first. So these two connections here, the factory amplifier is located right to the left of the steering wheel, up underneath the trim panel there. There's two connectors that are going to come out from the factory amplifier. They're going to connect into this bypass harness. And what this is going to do, this is going to tap the speaker wire into the existing wiring. You can leave the factory amplifier in place. You don't need to remove the amplifier itself. You're just grabbing the connectors and putting them into here. In addition, this remote wire, similarly like how we showed on the other side with other wiring harness, this is going to route to the back of the radio, and this is going to connect to that pink female bullet connector that's connected to the amp turn-on wire on the harness of the aftermarket radio. Let's go ahead and route this wiring. Just going to get our power wire out of the way. Put this up here. So I'm going to route this wiring back behind here. There's no compartment or anything to tuck this into, but there is a bar up here that's up underneath here. I'll show you a shot in a second. I'm just going to route this wiring up around that bar so it kind of hangs out on there, and that's what we can zip tie it to afterwards. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you in a second where that ended up going. So this is the bar that I was referring to when I ran the amp bypass harness from the driver's side footwell area up around this bar, and then came down the top side of it like this. And this is running to connect into the amplifier connections. So I'm going to do also is I'm going to pull the slack back, and I'm going to end up zip tying it to this bar right here as well. Ultimately, the goal is to get this back over to here so we can disconnect the factory amplifier. You see this wiring harness right here. This is the factory harness. This is the factory amplifier harness. At the end of this wiring, there's two connectors, and they're connected in the bottom of the factory amplifier. You're going to reach behind each connector, and you'll feel a little tab to push in. Push the little tab, and you'll pop the connector right out just like that. And then reach the next one. Do the same thing. You reach behind it. So when this is connected to the amplifier, there's this tab right here. You're going to press that tab and pull the connector right out. Same thing with this one here. There's this tab right here. The way this is mounted, it's backwards. So the tab is facing forward. You're going to push that tab and just pull the connector right out. And our bypass harness is going to connect right into this. Just like that. Now, of course, I'll pull this up in here and I'll zip tie this up and I'll clean this up. But we can leave this down for now because I'm also going to route this remote wire up through the column and over to the aftermarket radio to connect into the amp turn-on female bullet connector. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to attach this remote wire to the female bullet connector that's attached to the aftermarket radio. This is the amp turn-on wire. This is going to go up the steering wheel, up behind the steering wheel column, and then route behind the plastic trim pieces here. The easiest way to do this is just use a fish tape, wire, whatnot, and to push this down behind the steering wheel, tape it to the bottom of the post, and pull it up through. This is going to go just back behind here, pushing it from one side of the dash to the other to be able to come through. This is the aftermarket radio harness that we're going to connect it to. This is the amp turn-on wire, the female bullet connector that we prepped for you. Just connect these two together, and your amp turn-on wire is connected. This is all done. The amp wire is now connected to the radio harness. You could install this back into the dash, but we're going to go ahead and leave it out just so we can do a power test. We'll route the power wire through the firewall to the battery, do a quick power test on the amplifier, then we'll come back, reinstall this, and then we can dial in the amplifier, dial in the head unit, and set all of the adjustments. So let's go ahead and get moving to the power wire through the firewall now. Right, we're going to go ahead and feed the power wire up through the firewall. There's a rubber grommet. That grommet is right up here. Sometimes we would take the grommet out, puncture the hole, push the wire through, then reapply the grommet. This Jeep already has some electronics, some wiring coming through there, so it's not going to work in this case. So we're just going to push our power wire through that grommet right there. We're going to go behind this bar and up through to push through there. All right, here's the wire. We're going to go through the grommet now. There the power wire came through the grommet. Just go ahead and grab the end of it there. And you can pull it up and route it through however you want to route it to get to the other side there. As far as what I'm going to do is ultimately pull it up, attach it to this harness here, to zip tie it across the way. There's plenty of room there. Now we're going to go ahead and just zip tie this along the way. Oh. All right, now that I have the wire ran over here, I'm going to connect this to the positive lead. As long as the amp is already grounded, you can go ahead and connect the positive. What I'll do is I'll pull the fuse out of here first. I'll connect the positive, and then I'll install the fuse. So we're going to attach this to the positive. Go right onto here. There's obviously a few other accessories on this vehicle. As far as where you want to mount the fuse block, since there isn't a fuse holder of any sort, once I connect it, I'm just going to zip tie it to this OEM harness right here. You can put a piece of Velcro tape underneath here and Velcro it to side, whatever is easiest for you, really. So before I attach this, I'm going to remove this fuse. Now I can go ahead and attach the wire. All right, so the connections are made completely now. Now it's time to go ahead and install the fuse. Now remember, this may spark. It did once that hit, so it may not spark again, but if it does, just expect it, it's normal. And it did not because it already did once. So it shouldn't spark again after it does once. That's on. Time to put the cover on. We can just go ahead and zip tie this right to here. If you don't want this slack, you can just pull it back in, and there's plenty of room underneath the amp bracket, which you'll see there's still a roll of slack that we're going to manage and put it underneath the carpeting. So if you don't want this slack here, you can go ahead and pull that back as well. So there you go. Power is done. We're going to go ahead and just do a quick power test at the amplifier. Well, if we have power confirmation, then we will button up the radio, put the radio back in, put the dash back together, and then we'll adjust the amplifier. All right, we're going to go ahead and turn an accessory on just to make sure that we get a green power light at the amplifier. And we do. We're golden. So let's go ahead and turn it off. We'll button everything up here, clean up the wire management, clean it up. I already zip tied this and taped this up, but we're going to go ahead and manage the power wire. We'll put the radio back into the dash, and then we're going to go ahead and I'll show you how to set up the amplifier, as well as what to do with the sub wire. So we're going to get on that now. All right, let's go ahead and put the radio back into the dash. We have one screw down in here. We have two more screws, one on each side of the one on each side of the steering wheel, and one more screw on the other side, and I'll get one when I move over there. Let's go ahead and just wrap up our power wire. So, like I said, there's plenty of slack here, as I mentioned earlier when I was installing the fuse there. So what I like to do is just loop this up and wrap it underneath the carpeting. I like to go underneath the bracket. So we go under the carpeting, under the bracket here. This is what I was saying earlier, not to screw the bracket down because we're going to be lifting it up. It's all going to be tucked away. So I'm going to grab a couple zip ties and just zip tie up this, and then zip tie this wiring up here. As I mentioned earlier, there is a bolt. So this bolt we're going to take off. Now the wires underneath here. I'm going to set this right in the center there and tighten this bolt down. This is a 10 millimeter. Your holes will still line up. Yes, they will. There you go. Okay, I'm going to put this piece back up underneath the steering column there, where I took it out from. Now everything is connected, everything is done, except for the subwire. We have to put this trim panel piece back on here also, but I just want to talk about the subwire real quick. So this demonstration, we're just talking about the amplifier, not necessarily which subwire or how to route the subwire, how to install the subwoofer. So your subwoofer is going to go obviously in the back area or underneath the seat or something like that. So you're just going to tuck this underneath the trim here, the subwire. So as you saw, I just pushed underneath the trim. Just push this all the way back underneath the trim, underneath the carpet, route this back, and whichever subwoofer you choose will have the correct terminations on the subwire for you. Whether you have a downfiring sub, a side mounted sub, a tailgate sub, you're just going to route this wire back to the Jeep, underneath the carpeting and underneath the trim, just as I showed there. I'm going to put that trim panel piece back on here now. It just snaps into place. Push the push pins back in. Make sure the RCAs are seated nice and firmly in there. Like I said earlier, we do not send these out set up, so you're going to have to set up the settings based on your listening profile. And that's why we don't set them up. Everybody has their own ears, their own style of listening. So we just recommend settings for you and show you how to set it up, and then you can tune it to whatever works out best for you. Of course, before you put the seat, now is the good time to go ahead and get the settings adjusted to your likings. So what I recommend is from your radio, set your EQ at 0, so flatline your EQ. You turn your gains down all the way. So you turn the gains down. So you have the gains on amplifier 1, amplifier 2, and the gain on sub. So you turn those gains all the way down. So this is just using this style amp here, this kicker amp. Input level, since we're RCAs directly to the radio, the input level is giving you an option of high or low. That would be low. If you were speaker wire into the amplifier, that would be high. Since we're RCAs, the input level is low, so that button is out. The third button here is for the subwoofer. So you're going to want the subwoofer activated. So you want this pushed in. Now, as far as your crossovers are concerned, if you're running a coax system, say in the front and the rear, then you can go ahead and turn these crossovers to about 1 or 2, 3 clicks up or so, which would be around 9 o'clock, say 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Same thing for the rears. If you're running coax back there, if you're running a full component set, you would want to turn the crossovers off if the amplifier had that option. So for your rear, for your subwoofer, your crossover settings for that, since it's a subwoofer, is going to be set right around the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock area. And that's just setting the frequency to allow the low frequency to submit through the bass, through the subwoofer. And your bass boost, that's increasing your dB and decreasing your dB. That's going to be personal preference. You can start, say, at 12 o'clock, and you can increase that or decrease that. So now that all the gains are set to 0, and the aftermarket radio, the EQ is set to flatline, you're going to go ahead and turn your radio on, turn your volume up to about 75%, and you're going to slowly increase your gain starting on amplifier 1. You're going to increase that gain until you hear distortion coming from the speakers. Once you hear a slight distortion, you're going to turn that gain down just a tad, and that's the mark you want to be at. So now you can do the same thing for amplifier 2. You can do the same thing for your subwoofer. So again, turn your gains down to 0, flatline the EQ on your aftermarket radio, increase the volume of your radio to about 75%, and then starting at amplifier 1, slowly increase that gain until you hear a slight distortion, and then turn it back. This is a way to tune it by ear. If you want to tune it with a voltmeter, of course, that's a whole nother method. This is just a quick, easy ear method. So that's it. That's setting up your gains. You don't want to associate gain with volume. You don't want to max out the gains on here thinking that you're going to get more volume. That's a good way to blow your speakers. So you want to slowly, gradually increase your gain. Gain is power. And you don't want to send too much power. Everything has a limit. Remote bass, if you wanted to install a remote bass knob, you can go ahead and do that. Most amplifiers do. This one does. I'd say 9 out of 10 amplifiers that we offer will have an option to add a remote bass wire. We don't install one here. On our installs, we rarely do. However, it's personal preference if you want to be able to control your bass via knob. So, high level, that's how to adjust your amplifier. We'll also have a description on the website with some pictures and suggestions and notes. If you need any assistance during, after, any of that, please give us a call. We'll help you out. Now that that's set up, let's go ahead and get our seat installed. There you have it. The amp has been installed. Your amp may take a little bit of finagling to get to mount in between the seat posts, but definitely it'll fit. Any bundle that comes from Trail 7, the amp definitely fits. Hope you enjoyed this. We really enjoyed showing you how easy this is to install into your Jeep. If you're interested in picking up any of the full system bundles for your JK, please visit us today at www.trail7.com. Until next time, we'll see you out there.